So, want to get this started this morning. My name is Makara Rumley. I am the founder and CEO of Hummingbird Firm. We are a community engagement consulting company, and we help individuals, businesses, companies really connect with the communities that are associated with their various projects, whoever it is that they are trying to reach. And I know that seems very simplistic, but uh, if you have communities that you're attempting to connect with that you just can't send out an email blast and they're gonna see the message or see the information, and you actually have to think about how do they receive information the best, what's going to have them pay attention, what are their priorities, so that they then care about what it is that you are talking about, or pay attention to what it is that you are talking about. Then um, there are just some strategies, and there's some things that you really have to think about in order to connect with those people. So the reason why I'm all flustered this morning is that I partied really hard with my family yesterday, all day. My youngest child just finished fifth grade. So now I have no more children in elementary school. So it was a celebratory as well as a disappointing day for him, because all of the traditions and experiences that other fifth graders who graduated from that school had, he's not able to have because of COVID-19, because of social distancing. And just that experience started to have me think about how that connects to community engagement. And what is the impression that you want to leave when you finish a project? You know, what is it that my son's teachers wanted to, what is it that my son wanted his teachers, administration, and staff to remember about his time there, to remember about his time matriculating at his school? What impression did he leave? Are they going to have good things to say? Are his superlatives going to be ones that he can be proud of? Or is he going to look back in 10 years and be embarrassed? And that's the same type of thought process that we all need to consider when we are doing projects in communities, whether it's a research project for a college or university, or a health entity, and you're gathering information and you're interviewing people. Did you come back and show them the finished project, or did they all only see you once, where you extracted information from them, but they never saw the report or the video or whatever it was that you created? And you didn't create a version that was palatable for them, without all the technical terms and jargon. You have to close that loop to make sure the lasting impression is one that is representative of your organization or your company. Or if you try to go to those same group of people again, or that same community again, and they see you coming, what people will say is, "Oh, you don't want to talk to them because all they do is take, take, take. And they never followed up with us." That's what people remember. They remember that experience. For projects that take a really long time. Good morning, Kyle. Good morning, Pamela. For projects that take a long time, such as roads and bridges, environmental cleanups, development projects, even though I swear when they start building a condo, you look one day and they're pouring concrete, and you come back a week later and it's framed up and they're laying bricks, and you're like, how did this happen so fast? You always have to remember those folks work like 24 hours a day. They put up lights, and they're working while you're asleep. But those projects seem to happen so fast, right? And so even for the projects that last a long time, you're still communicating with them along the way, even if nothing else is happening. The impressions you make, as Pamela just mentioned, do last forever, and they can really impede on future opportunities, not just for yourself or your company or the organization you represent, but also for any other similar entity that would come after you talking about a project. And so, what are those lasting impressions? Was it that it was very transactional, that you came in and you were educating people and you're talking to people, but you really didn't care about what their input was? They gave their input, but then they didn't see it reflected in anything. You have to really state the obvious. As a project is developed and decisions are made, you have to repoint out to the people who live in those communities, hey, we chose to do A because this was in the vision plan that you created 5 years ago. Or we chose to do B because we heard, Mary Smith's comment and really wanted to make sure that we included her suggestions in this project. People, what they see, feel, hear, taste, and touch, that is the proof, that is their evidence that you have really and truly engaged with them, right? And taken some of their ideas and suggestions and comments and incorporated it within the project when you can. And when you can't, you should take the time to explain why. And because it's not all financially related, a lot of what people ask really is not expensive. So if there's an explanation and that explanation makes sense, just take the time to have the conversation, to have that exchange, that back and forth exchange of information. It's really important to do that. What is your lasting impression? What is the experience that you're going to remember? When I think back on different Christmases or holiday seasons, as a kid, and I had all these lists of things that I wanted. Yes, I remember some strategic years where, I got something specific I asked for, like a My Little Pony or a Holly Bake Oven, kitchen. And if you've ever made anything in one of those things, it is absolutely disgusting. So had I known that that's what it was going to taste like, I would not have been asking for that. But as a kid, you see the commercial and you think that's the end all and be all, right? But albeit some really specific things that I can count on one hand, you remember experiences. You remember going on trips with your family. Some of the experiences, are good and some not so good, but it's the experiences and those impressions, those footprints that last forever that you remember that really inform your decision making in present day. When we talk about the past, some people are like, oh, that happened in the past. That has nothing to do with what's going on today. But your past experiences, your culture, your history, your interaction with people and companies and entities and schools and businesses does impact the decisions that you make in present day. Have you ever gone to a particular restaurant that you didn't think had good community service and you said, I'm never going back there again? And you have never gone back there again. That's an experience that happened in the past that informs the decisions that you make present day, right? If you purchase something, a product from a company, maybe you order it online and you get it and it's not a good quality product, then that experience that you had in the past impacts how you make decisions in the present. So the past really is important, and the past, as much as a lot of us want to think has nothing to do with today, really has everything to do with today. So in your interaction, in your communication on projects, you have to make sure that you are creating a past, right, of interactions, of experiences, of that legacy with your company, with your nonprofit, with your entity that has a positive lasting impression, because then it's just easier to interact with people, right? Relationships are built over time. And that doesn't mean that sometimes you may not have arguments or disagreements or not see eye to eye, but the relationships that last are the relationships where you're actually able to talk through conflict, and you're actually able to talk through and work through points that you don't agree on. I know all of us, whether it's through family relationships, friendships, acquaintances, those relationships, the ones that have been tested and are still standing, those are the ones that we determine are the strongest and have the most stick-to-itiveness, right? And so just those lessons learned can be applied to community engagement and how you interact with people. I know, Pamela mentioned your impressions last forever. Kyle, I don't know if you have any opinions on maybe in some of the projects that you work on or you've seen that other people work on, whether you've seen lasting impressions benefit a project, really, help it, or where if the lasting impression isn't so great, how that can really take away from a change that's being made in the community that can really improve the quality of life, but people can't see that because of those impressions. Kyle just mentioned that sometimes stakeholders make requests that are beyond your organization's scope of work or your capacity to fill. If you don't satisfactorily educate them on why you can't fulfill their requests, you will lose their trust. That's right. I mean, we're not magicians. None of us as professionals can go into a community and wave a magic wand to fix all of the stressors and the ills. We can listen. We can point folks in the right direction if we do have relationships with someone else that can answer their question. And we can sometimes say, you know what? I don't know. That's really messed up. That's really messed up. Good morning, Arla. That's really messed up, but I don't have a solution. But I'm willing to talk with you so that we can brainstorm and figure out what would be the best direction for you to go. And in the words that you choose and the way that you choose to react to those type of questions or reacts or comments, Kyle is correct. That goes a long way to build trust. If you're dismissive, we're not in charge of that. Or, that's the city's responsibility, or that's such and such responsibility. That's not the way you want to answer that question. You want to say, well, based off what I've heard, that really sounds like it's under the purview of this particular department within the city. I can get a contact for you so that you can reach out to them directly. It may not be an ultimate solution, but they're not walking away with nothing. They're walking away with something. And if you do have the bandwidth within your company or your organization or as an individual, you might be willing to make a call with them, make a call in advance to make sure that they don't get pushed to a voicemail or dismissed or never make any traction. If you have any of that, any type of power within your position, it doesn't detract from your main goal to just be helpful as a fellow citizen where that makes sense. Or if you have an intern who works for you, or someone who's junior who could do a little bit of research and follow up with that person, but making sure that there's follow up and they feel like they're being heard and they're being seen, not dismissed. Because if they feel dismissed, then you're creating an experience that does not leave a good lasting impression. And that is definitely not what we want. We want to continue to have an ebb and flow of conversation No, we cannot control everything, but we can be intentional and we can manage expectations. And in manage expectations, you're honest and you're vulnerable about what your limitations are up front with the people that you're talking to. You can acknowledge those limitations. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? Sometimes we just want to appear as if we are like all knowing Oz and we don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. Nobody even has the bandwidth to know everything. Doesn't mean that we're not capable, but you just can't be an expert in everything. You can be multi-talented, but you cannot be an expert in everything. I just want to make sure I read Kyle's comment. People often think in simple terms. Example, stakeholders living in a contaminated community that's also poor often ask for a buyout. Agencies do not have that capacity in most cases. Yeah, there have been stories over time in different parts of the country, especially in Louisiana, where there are examples where federal agencies or companies have actually had to relocate communities because maybe their exposure to a particular community pollution is one that just cannot be fixed within the time to make sure that everyone is happy. But those there are not a lot of them, right? There are not a lot of them. And so you're going to oftentimes be in a situation where you have to figure out how to mitigate. Mitigate, that means lessen your exposure to whatever that pollution is and almost live with it. There's this term that we use in my industry called Fenceline communities. And it's where really the community lives right on the other side of the fence from the polluting industry. I mean, you are a stone throw away. Not just using the term theoretical, you are literally a stone throw away. And sometimes what you see on that other side of the fence is a school, a playground, a basketball court, homes. You're very, very close. And it's the chicken before the egg. Sometimes the industry was there and the people who live in the communities were originally the workers who worked in the factory or worked in the facility, right? So they wanted to, this is before, like decades ago, before we were tracking pollution and exposure. You just knew you needed to live close to work. And so the factory workers or the people who worked in those industries lived close, right? That's how the neighborhood was formed. And sometimes the neighborhood was actually formed because it was on the outskirts of the city. And oftentimes cities and municipalities choose the outskirts of the city in order to house polluting industries so that there's some distance, right, between people moving around and living life and that industry. And so, for several reasons, and there are lots of different stories of how it came to be, residences and polluting facilities can literally live across the street from each other. And so you really, really, as Kyle said, it seems like, just move the neighborhood, just, move them someplace else. And it just doesn't happen very often, even though that just seems like a simple solution. And then it's tough, and not to get into the weeds or too wonky with it, you have to determine how much someone's property is worth. And their current market value may not be as high as they think that it should be because it's next to the polluting facility. So then, okay, so you give them this buyout, and then they really can't afford to buy anything anyplace else in a neighborhood where they're not in that same situation. So it can be really tricky. It's been done, but it is not done often. And so, again, it goes back to managing expectations and letting folks know up front, hey, you may think this is an option, but in order for that to be an option, these 20 things would have to be present. And in this particular neighborhood, we only have 5. Let folks know that decisions aren't arbitrary. Let people know that you're really trying to make decisions that have their health and their best interest front and center, and make them part of that process. Because if they're part of that process, you're doing it with them, not for them and not to them. And then they're invested in the success, and they're invested in that process. Definitely want to bring in Kyle's next point. People seldom see themselves or the roles they play in perpetuating their own demise. People will come to a public meeting to complain about a polluting industry, let's say a car factory. Then when you ask them how many people in the room own or drive a car, you get blank stares. So you have to balance, what. And my response to that, Kyle, and I know all of us have seen this, is just fear, right? You're in a room and you say things that don't necessarily make sense, right, Kyle? You're talking about cars, but you don't actually drive a car. But what you are is you're fearful of your health and safety. And we all process that in different ways. Sometimes it comes out non sequitur. Other times it's related, but you're just scared. And so that's what you're balancing. You're balancing the emotional component of something that may seem really benign or business as usual to the company or the industry that's coming in to do that project. Charlotte Clark, she said, historically, because of zoning, redlining, have kept poor communities in those heavily polluted areas. Property values are lower in those areas, and it's all they can afford. It's complicated. They still need representation, though. Yes, those communities definitely need to make sure that there is a process in place where their voices are heard, and decisions that are made will be helpful. And oftentimes, they can be disenfranchised, not even feel comfortable sharing their voice. There's a whole power dynamic around a company being there, making decisions, doing this project, and you thinking, well, I don't have a lot of money, so I don't have a lot of say. And that's not necessarily true. So what we do at Hummingbird Firm is make sure that we are making sure to, share our voice and make sure that we're in a position to make sure that the community voices are heard and the information about the project is translated in a way on behalf of that company or that agency in a way that everyday people can understand. Because you can only ask questions if you understand what's going on. Like, if you don't get it, then you don't even know what it is that you have a question about or what you should be concerned about, right? And it just depends. Like, when my daughter starts talking to me about like space and the universe and the Big Bang Theory, and my eyes just start to cross, it's because I'm not following. So, when you're presenting the project and you're sharing the information and the timeline and what pollutants are involved or how long it's going to take, you got to pay attention to make sure that people's eyes aren't crossing, because when that happens, then they really don't understand what it is that you're saying. They're sitting there, they're looking at you, they hear you, but they're really not absorbing the information because it's presented in a way that's not palatable. And I know I've talked about this before. In the corporate world, we're really used to putting together a PowerPoint presentation and then asking if anyone has any questions. That format does not translate in every single environment. And so you may have to have more of an interactive setup where people are moving around and they're looking at pictures and they're putting sticky notes on there. Thanks for joining us today, Leah. They're putting sticky notes and comments, right, on pictures that they're visually seeing. Other times you need to set chairs in a circle so everyone feels equal, that they're on a level playing field, that no one is talking at you. So that you don't want stadium type seating. Sometimes you want small groups, so people can and have kind of a round robin setup. So depending on what group you're in, you're talking about a different topic or you're talking about a different component. And everyone in the room isn't vocal. Now, I'm that kid in class that people would just be like, oh my God, she has another question. I'm trying to get out of here because my brain just works really, really fast and I'm firing all these questions. But other people need time to absorb. It's not about better. It's just different. The way we process information is different. Some of us are visual, some of us are auditory, some of us are experiential, and some of us have to do all three at the same time. So when you are going to present to a community, you need to make sure that you are using communication style that's going to hit everybody. So you need pictures, they need to be vivid, okay? You can't move too fast with polls because everybody doesn't read that fast. So if you have a poll and you're asking a question, you actually have to give people time to think about it so that they can react. And if you have like a frequently asked question section, if somebody asks a question, you're like, oh, it's in the FAQs. Do you want them to listen to you or do you want them to read the FAQs? Some people can't do both at the same time. Their attention is split. And so you want to make sure that you are presenting in a way where people can see vivid, clear pictures of what you're talking about, the language that you are using, the vocabulary that you're using is based off of an 8th grade level. And then you want to make sure that you are broadcasting in different formats. I know a lot of us are not meeting in person right now, but when we were having in-person meetings, everyone could not show up in person. So you have to use Facebook Live, allow people who, don't have the internet and can't be on a video conference or can't even come in person. Make sure you're thinking about how can they engage? How can I get my input from them? And there are lots of different tools that you can use. And I'll take one more question and then definitely invite all of you to just visit our website, hummingbirdfirm.com. And if you go there, you'll see a pop-up of just some free community engagement tips that I definitely want all of you to have for coming and being part of our community engagement chat today. Want to get this last comment from Kyle. The concept of power distancing deals with the concept that people accept and expect that all communities are not treated equally. This erodes a community's desire to get or be engaged. And Kyle is right. You go in like, oh, well, you wouldn't do this in such and such's community. I bet you are talking to them. I bet you're listening to them. I bet you wouldn't put this project here. When you know that, you can speak to that up front, right? We shouldn't run and hide from the difficult questions, from the difficult comments and the difficult opinions. People respect you more when you face them head on, even if you're not perfect, right? Because nobody is. So you do want to address those concepts of power distancing and in a lot of cases, all communities have not been treated equally. If you look at a city's plan for investment, communities have been underinvested and underserved. When you go into a community where, used to be thriving and lots of businesses there and open and people moving about, and then it takes a turn, there is a part where, maybe continued infusion of capital and economic development has not remained consistent over the years for that particular part of town. That's the reality. That is something that has happened in the past that impacts the present that we need to be cognizant of so that we make good decisions around that. So I just want to thank everyone for joining me today for this community engagement chat. Definitely invite your friends to come next time. If there's a particular topic you think you would like for me to talk about or you'd like for me to expand on, please message me directly through Facebook, or I'm putting my email address in the chat. So mrumley@hummingbirdfirm.com. So you can just send me an email directly. If you go to my website, there's a pop-up box. You can chat that way. I really just do want to hear from you, because in these chats, we are talking about how to solve problems. Yes, we're identifying challenges, but we never walk away without talking about those solutions, because I'm results driven, and that's the only way that I feel comfortable being. But again, thank you for all of you for joining me today. I'll see you next Friday for our community engagement chat. Topic yet to be determined. Gonna see what feedback that I receive from all of you. But please have a wonderful weekend, wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Be safe with regards to your social distancing, and see you next week. Bye.